What's up, speeders? Welcome back to Speed Creed TV. I'm Hafiz, and this is the Mercedes A35 AMG. And I have two questions. Should you buy a Mercedes-Benz C300, the new one, or one of these? And also my second question is this the best value sports car that you can buy today, at least brand new? That's what I'm gonna find out. So first, let's take a closer look at the car. Let's start by the exterior. So the badge right here is an AMG badge right now. So for people saying that this isn't a real AMG, well, it's an AMG badge right here. No longer a Mercedes badge. You've got a Mercedes badge right here still, and an AMG grille. The front bumper is overall very different from the A250. These are not real intakes, but there is like a slot right here for air to go through. I guess that helps with aerodynamics and performance. And then if you go to the side, you can see it has very big wheels. These are 19-inch, which is really big actually for a car of this size. It's a 5-spoke AMG wheel, has Pirelli P0 tires, and of course you get the bigger AMG brakes. It's drilled and it's 4 pistons, so plenty of braking performance there. You can see it also says turbo here, 4MATIC, all-wheel drive. And then if we go to the back, you get this little spoiler here. It's painted in the car's body color. It says AMG A35, and of course the whole rear bumper is very different from a standard A-Class. You got 2 exhausts. If you get a 45, an A45, or a 63 AMG, you get 4. On this car, you get 2 exhausts. They're real though, they're real tips, so that's nice. And of course, you get the rear diffuser right here, which looks really cool. Makes the car look more sporty. So I think that's everything from the outside. I mean, it's not really like a bespoke sports car built from the ground up. This is a normal sedan that's been made to be faster. So from the outside, there's not much to talk about. So let's go on the inside. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that I absolutely love the interior design of this era from Mercedes. You get the 2 large screens right here, one for the gauge cluster, one for the infotainment screen. The infotainment screen is touchscreen, and it's pretty responsive. It's okay. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's good. But the thing is, you used to have a touchpad here. In this car, the new car, it's gone. So the only way to control the screen is now, well, with your fingers or through here from the steering wheel. So on the left side, there's a touchpad to control that. I wish we still had this. It's not perfect. I also prefer the rotational dial, but it's fine. Also, the MBUX system, or MBUX, some people call it, is not really my preferred system. I actually prefer Porsches, but I think it's still okay. I think it's a little too cluttered sometimes, but as a whole, it's good. I like it. And then down here, the air vents, as you can see, is absolutely beautiful. And there's a bit of ambient lighting there. It's just such a nice looking air vent. Mercedes really outdid themselves here. And then below that, you have physical switches for the aircon controls. Thank you, Mercedes. But here's the thing, in a new Mercedes like the C300, the C-Class, the new C-Class.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
Here's the problem with reviewing a Mercedes.
I'm sorry, but I can't help you with it right now.
Shut up!
What can I do for...
No! Here's the problem with reviewing a Mercedes. You don't have to say hey. You can, if you simply say, it will respond like that, and it will just disturb you and throws you off your focus while reviewing the car. So anyway, right here, down here, you have the physical switches for the aircon controls, which is great. But if you know, in their newer cars like the C-Class, you no longer get this. It's all integrated into the big touchscreen in the middle. It has a dedicated like space for the touch controls, but you know, when it comes to aircon, just give it physical switches. Like maybe you don't need to have this much, but at least to turn it on and off, to control the airflow, to control the temperature, it should have these physical switches. These are wonderful, by the way. I love these switches. That's great. And then down here you got some storage space, 2 cup holders. They're very small, so for bigger water bottles you're gonna have to find another space. You do get USB-C and a wireless charging pad, so that's good. Down here, they've also removed a lot of the buttons. You used to get like the mode switches, and then I think a few more. Oh, there was a manual override button as well, but they removed the majority of that here, and now it's just the dynamic button. And obviously that's, oh, I have to turn the car on, but basically when you use this button to change the driving modes, you then have to choose from here, from the screen, to adjust the driving modes. No, you can no longer do it from here. And then you have a button for the parking cameras, and I do appreciate this though. There's a volume knob. It's still physical, and you can press it to mute it or turn it off. That's great. And then right here, of course, you got some storage space. You got two USB-C plugs right there. The seats. So this car is available with bucket seats, but in this spec, the spec that we get here, you get the sports seats, which is fine anyway. I think it's quite comfortable. Now let's get to the steering wheel. There's a lot of stuff here, as you can see. But okay, so the pedal shifters, they feel really nice. I like that. There's a lot of buttons here. I'll get to this in a bit because I don't really like this. And then down here you have the drive mode switches. So on the right is the drive mode switches for the overall drive mode. There's individual, slippery mode, there's comfort, sport, and sport plus. And it's really beautiful. I love this. It's a screen. It looks really good. I think Mercedes did an awesome job here. So good job, Mercedes. And on the left, you can actually configure it to change what you want to change. And let me show you. So right now, it says adjusting the suspension, right? So it's in comfort, and if I press that, it's in sport, and now it's in sports plus. Just for the suspension, it doesn't change the drivetrain. But if I do this, you can see the icon changes. Now it is in full auto mode, or I can put it in manual override, and then I can change. This is for the stop-start controls, which is a bit pointless because you have a button right here anyway. AMG dynamics, that's for the traction control and stuff like that. You can adjust it. Do you want basic or advanced? If you're an advanced driver, maybe. And down here you can also change it, but basically it's the same. You can turn off the traction control also from here. It's not responding because the car's off. So yeah, I love this, but here are some things that I don't like about this car. First, the steering wheel. I think it looks amazing. It looks great. It's just a little confusing, you know. I like to think that I'm pretty tech savvy, but the buyers of this car are gonna be quite old, right? I'm not sure how they're gonna figure this out. Okay, so let me talk you through this thing. Okay, so on the right, on the top right and top left, you have sort of a D-pad. On the right one is to control the gauge cluster. On the left one is to control the infotainment system. Now, okay, fine, fair enough, quite simple, but they're not actual buttons. They're more like a trackpad, and there are so many options, and I don't know, it can be a little confusing, a little cluttered sometimes. These are actual buttons, so the home button, the OK button, and the go back button, they are actual buttons, but the D-pad is actually touch sensitive. They're more like a touchpad, not an actual button. Right here on the left side, the lower left side, is for the audio controls, so you can control the volume from here. They are actual buttons though, so that's good. And then you have the cruise control right here. They are actual buttons as well. I guess it's not so bad, but I don't know, these two here on the top, they're kind of a little confusing. I think you will get used to it, but it will take some time. But in any case, you know, with an infotainment system, really, it's, you know, you either like it or you don't, right? I'm personally not the biggest fan of this MBUX era, but some people may like it. So yeah, to each their own. Another thing I don't like about this car is the gas pedal. It sort of hangs from the dashboard from above, which is fine, but in a German performance-oriented sports car, I feel like it should be planted on the floor. I don't know about you guys, but I much prefer that in a car like this. Another thing I don't like about this car is that it has this warning chime every time you put it in neutral, so that's really annoying. Okay, so for example, let's say you're driving about, you know, and then you come to a red light, right? And the red light is gonna take some time, 60 seconds or more. In this car, of course, you can push the brake down, it will engage the brake hold function, right? Because this car has that. But I drive an older car. Obviously, I'm a creature of habit. I drive an older car and it doesn't have a brake hold function. So what I would do is put it in neutral. But if I do that in this car, that warning chime, why? And permanently active, risk of vehicle rolling. Okay, yeah, fine. It's a safety feature. It's dangerous if you put the car in neutral, not engaging the handbrake, and then you get out of the car. It's dangerous, obviously. But I haven't touched the door handles. The car is still locked. Why? It's so annoying. Like, I mean, I get it, but come on, just get rid of it. It's really annoying. Aside from that though, the interior is very nice. There's space in the back is pretty okay. It's not the best, obviously, but it's pretty good, as you'd expect from a subcompact car. So that's the interior of the Mercedes A35 AMG. I think overall, Mercedes did a good job with this interior. I do like this era of Mercedes interior design. I guess all that's left to do is to drive the car and see what it's like to drive and see if it's exciting. Ooh, I just remembered. So this car has something called an emotion start. So basically what it does, it adds a little extra throttle when you start the car up, so it's a bit louder. So for example, let's say you're leaving the Cars and Coffee, right? And you want to show off a bit. So what you do is you get the car ready, put your foot on the brake, hold the upshift pedal, and yeah, it's a bit louder. So let's see how it drives. So let's start with the comfort. I think in terms of comfort, this car, it's a bit stiffer than maybe, let's say, a C-Class, and you know, that's to be expected. I mean, this is a sports car, it's more performance oriented, so the tuning, the suspension is different over the standard A-Class. It's gonna feel a bit more sporty, but I think, you know, driving about in town, this car is still perfectly fine. On highways, it's actually really good. At high speeds, I think this car is very comfortable. Yeah, I mean, it's no S-Class for sure, but totally acceptable if you ask me. And Pierre did note, side-to-side motion can be a bit quite really stiff, like really hard, because I think the roll bar is very thick. So, you know, when you go over a speed bump at an angle, then maybe there's gonna be quite a bit of motion because the roll bar is so stiff. But overall, I think this is good. You know, we're in comfort mode, going through some con block roads, totally fine. It's not perfect. It's not an S-Class, but totally acceptable. I think as for day-to-day driving, the car is fine. I mean, 300 horsepower is plenty, but of course, it's a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. So, you know, you're cruising about, you're in comfort mode, and then maybe you see a gap in front of you in traffic and you want to go for the gap, put your foot down, and it takes a while, you know. You have to wait for the car to shift down. You know, power doesn't really come on until like 3,500 RPM. So yeah, for a moment, there's gonna be this moment where you're gonna be like just basically standing still in traffic, waiting for the power to spool up. But I think with most cars which are turbocharged these days, that's the case anyway. Now let's talk about that engine. Some people would underestimate this car and say it's not a real AMG, and it's kind of true. You know, it's a 2-liter 4-cylinder that you'll find in the A250. It's not a bespoke AMG engine, so yeah, it's not really an AMG, but it still has 306 horsepower, 400 Newton meters of torque, and because it has an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission, this car has launch control, which Mercedes calls race start. So what you do is just put in Sport Plus, put your foot. I would want that, yes, yeah. Hard on the brakes, throttle full, and whoa. Not bad at all, Mercedes. So yeah, that's launch control in the A35. Initially, the launch is quite violent, but the car, when you engage launch control in this car, the rev is about 3,500 to 4,000. It's under 4,000 RPM. So, you know, so when you let go of the brakes and the car launches, initially it's very violent, But then there's a moment where the car is trying to get into boost. The RPM sort of drops a bit, and it's not quite in the boost range of the turbo. So launch is violent, but then there's sort of a bit of lag. And then finally you get to over 4,000 RPM, the turbo kicks in, and it goes really quickly. But yeah, but the thing is, it revs until 6,000 RPM only. So you only get about 2,000 RPM of like full power, and I don't know, it just doesn't feel all that nice. But I will admit that this is a fast car, and I think for most people this is faster than they will ever need. Like, there's plenty of power here. And then in terms of handling, it's not the most exciting car you're gonna drive. The car is still all-wheel drive with a front-wheel drive tendency. It can send up to like 50% of its power to the rear wheels when necessary, but ultimately it still has a front-wheel drive tendency. So a lot of the time, most of the time, it's gonna feel like a front-wheel drive car. But I will admit, this is actually not bad. It's quite good fun, actually. I think the steering ratio is perfect. You know, the steering, so how quick the wheels turn depending on your steering input. I think this car nails it. Not a lot of feedback, but that's a given, really, you know, with electronic power steering. But I think the steering ratio is really good. I think it's better than the Subaru BRZ for sure. Maybe even better than a Mini as well. So in terms of handling, it's not the most exciting car you're gonna find, but I still think it's really good. It actually feels really nice. I love the shape, the size of the steering wheel as well. It's not as good as something like a Porsche, obviously, but I really do like this actually. Handling wise, yeah, it feels like a nice little hot hatch. Not the most engaging, but if you appreciate hot hatches, like, yeah, this definitely feels quite good. But obviously this is an all-wheel drive car. It has front-wheel drive tendencies. It can send up to like 50% of its power to the rear wheels, but only in certain situations, and you cannot control it. That's all up to the car. So it still feels mostly like a front-wheel drive car. And so, you know, in the A45, you can have, I think, like up to like 90% to the rear wheels, and it also has drift mode. But in this car, none of that. This is primarily gonna feel like a front-wheel drive car. So don't expect any, you know, tail out action like you can, you know, do with a rear-wheel drive car. So it's fun, but it's not gonna be the most exciting car you'll drive. If you want some tail-out action, then probably you'll have to look at the A45, or better yet, maybe the M2. You know, if you want some tail-out action. I mean, the used M2 I hear is pretty cheap these days. Speaking of the M2, let's talk more about this car's value and its lifestyle aspects. You can buy a used M2 for around the same price as this car. In fact, if you're good at haggling, you can probably get it under 1 billion rupiah, which is crazy cheap for a sports car of that caliber. But of course, that's going to be used. I'm talking about the F87 M2, by the way. That's going to be used, so you won't get the peace of mind of a new car like this, such as the 5-year integrated service package that this car gets. But that's interesting, right? The M2 is an exciting enthusiast sports car. Rear-wheel drive, you know, and straight 6 engine. It's an exciting enthusiast sports car. But it's surprisingly not holding its value very well. And that begs the question, like, how is this going to hold its value in 5 years' time? I don't think the depreciation will be that bad in 5 years' time, but don't expect this car to hold its value. And, you know, you buy a car to enjoy, not to speculate, so unless you really care that much about resale value, then I guess it's not a big deal. As far as I can tell so far, this is actually a very good value car. At 1.2 billion rupiah off the road, this is a lot of car. The engine, the suspension, the handling, the comfort, the interior. Honestly, it's really hard to think of a car at this price that offers this much. Now, speaking of value, this is actually, well, if you're buying brand new anyway, it's the cheapest entryway to the AMG club. So when you buy a car like this, you might want to join a community, right? You know, share your passion with other people, network with new people. And this is basically the cheapest way to get to the AMG Club Indonesia. If you want to buy a new car, of course you can buy used, but if you're buying new, at 1.2 billion rupiah, this is the cheapest entryway to the AMG Club Indonesia. And of course you can join other communities as well if you want, other sports car communities. But yeah, there's something to think about. So back to the original questions. Should you buy a Mercedes C-Class or one of these? And is this the best value sports car that you can buy right now? Well, if you spend most of your time as a passenger, then you should get a C300 instead, because that's going to be more comfortable, slightly more economical, and just a generally better car to be a passenger in. If you're going to spend most of your time driving though, you should get one of these. It's more powerful, it's slightly more interesting, more exciting to drive, but it's still a good all-rounder, so you can make this your daily. And then to the second question, is this the best value sports car that you can buy right now? If you only consider new cars, I genuinely think this is the best value sports car. It's really hard to think, I really cannot think of any other sports car for this money that is new that offers as much as this car. It may not be the most exciting sports car to drive, but I still think it's quite entertaining and it's quite interesting to drive, and I do enjoy driving it. So yeah, I'm gonna drive it some more. Thank you, speeders. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.